Right, so this is the first fire in 130 for many years. We're just putting a warming fire in today. That's in order to just start gently warming the thing up, mainly for the refractory brick arch in the firebox. That's made of cast refractory blocks, and they need to be well, they've been drying out in the workshop for some time, and then we've had an electric heater on them once they've been in the firebox, just to try and drive the moisture out. But we're having a little fire in there now in order to just warm them up gently, because the danger is if you warm them up too quickly, if there's moisture still trapped in the casting, it'll blow the block apart or break it apart, which is obviously not very good, because they're relatively fragile things, but they're quite important to the function of the firebox, because they direct the heat round the top of the firebox before going out to down the tubes to the smoke box. So, and also we're going to try and steam the loco properly tomorrow for the first time. So what we're going to do is gently put some heat into the boiler so that we're not warming things up too quickly. So we'll have a bit of a fire in today, warm things up, let it go out, and then it'll be a little bit warm for tomorrow morning when the proper fire goes in order to raise steam for the first time.
Yeah, she likes to start with.
Here we are in the heritage shed at Boston Lodge. We've got here the Carnarvon Castle loco, which is one of a pair of diesels originally built in South Africa that we acquired in the 1990s. Originally the locos were built by a company called CH Funky in Johannesburg, and they were built for service in Namibia for the Consolidated Diamond Mines Company. And they were built originally with Caterpillar engines to haul the stuff they were mining in Namibia to find the diamonds in. When the two locos were redundant from that job, they were returned to Funkies, who rebuilt them. This was in the 1980s, and they put Cummins engines in, and they then went to work in Port Elizabeth in South Africa, the Pretoria Portland Cement Works in Port Elizabeth. And then they were eventually made redundant from that role, and we were able to buy them, as I said, in the 1990s. So of the two locos, one has been rebuilt heavily and is the Vela Festiniog, and that fits the Festiniog loading gauge. It had to be cut down and made smaller to fit the Festiniog. This one, the Carnarvon Castle, retains the original higher cab, and so now we only use it on the Welsh Highlands because of that. It's too big to fit up the Festiniog. But mechanically the two are very much the same. So this one, the Carnarvon Castle, we've used it since we reopened the Welsh Highlands, started in the 1990s, and it's become due for a body and upper mechanical parts overhaul. The bogies had a big overhaul a few years ago. They're in very good order, but now we're working on the upper bodywork and the mechanical bits. Right. Here we've got this is the front end of the loco. Normally, obviously, there's bonnet bodywork here covering all these bits over, but all the bodywork is off at the moment while we work on it. This area here, this is the vacuum brake generation part of the loco. When in the 1980s, when the locos were rebuilt for the cement job in Port Elizabeth, they had vacuum brake fitted then. They didn't have vacuum brake before that. And what Funkies did at that time is they put an extra small diesel engine here and an exhauster in this space. It was a bit of a messy, crude conversion. So when the locos first came here, we did away with that, and we had a belt drive arrangement off the engine to drive the vacuum brake exhauster. Anyway, we've now modified that further to our new favourite arrangement, which is to have a hydraulic drive to the exhauster. And this little thing here is a hydraulic motor which will drive the exhauster behind. The exhauster is actually from a class 47 diesel. We've got quite a few of those. These are the vacuum tanks, and the hydraulic motor will be driven at a constant speed off a pump that's driven off the engine. The advantage of that is that the exhauster will spin at a constant speed without having to you need to rev the engine to create the vacuum for the vacuum brake. So moving further back, we've got the radiator for the engine, and then here we've got the Cummins NTA engine, which I say was a 1980s engine supplied by Cummins in the UK to South Africa back then. Had some repairs, but it's still basically in good order. You can see the turbo here. It's makes 335 horsepower roughly, which is quite adequate for a reasonable sized train on the Welsh Island, which is what this loco is used for. Next, driven off the engine, this is the Allison transmission, which is it's called a power shift transmission. So there's no clutch arrangement. There's a fluid flywheel torque converter part, and then there are 3 speed gears which can be driven in either direction, and that's all operated within in there. And then the output drive comes from the output flanges on either side of the bottom of the transmission down there, and then there's a prop shaft going each way to drive the final drive gearboxes, which are within the bogies. So one of the things we're doing is we're improving the control system to the loco at the moment. We're going to control the gear selection with pneumatics rather than a cable. That's what these 3 cylinders here are for. They'll select the speeds, and then this one here selects the direction. So missing in this next bit of the loco is the cab, which we can have a look at outside. We've got some work to do on that. So right at the back here we've got the loco's fuel tank. It used to have twin tanks, but we don't need that much capacity. There's plenty of capacity there in the one tank for what we need. Right, this is the cab for the Carnarvon Castle loco. One of the interesting things about these funky diesels, when they were first built, they were the first fiberglass bodied diesel locomotives in the world. So all this cab and the bonnets were made in fiberglass. However, this is one of the next bits of the Carnarvon Castle we're going to be working on, and we've found a problem in that although the fiberglass structure of this cab is okay, there are various bits of steel, like this bit down here, that are inserted into the fiberglass to form brackets and things, and the steel has corroded over the years, and it's starting to burst the fiberglass open in places and cause all sorts of problems. So having looked carefully at this cab, we've decided that the best option is to actually replace it with an all steel new cab. So one of the next things we're going to do actually is bring this old cab into the workshop and measure it up carefully, and then we're going to design a new steel replacement. And one of the other things we're going to do is look at the interior layout of the cab, because as it was arranged, we had 2 completely separate control positions and 2 sets of controls, one on each end of the cab. but in the new design we're going to have a sort of a central desk, which will have one set of controls on, and that will enable us to simplify the control arrangements, and it'll also make the doors easier to arrange in the cab, because previously there were external sliding doors on this cab and they were somewhat troublesome, so we're going to redesign the door arrangements as well and hopefully come up with a better, simpler arrangement altogether. This is the bodywork for the Carnarvon Castle loco. It's fiberglass construction like the cab, but this the bonnets that you can see here, they're actually in reasonable condition, so we're reusing them, and as you can see they've been repainted into the green with a yellow stripe livery that the loco is going to wear when the rebuild is completed. This is the second of our funky diesel locos from South Africa, heavily rebuilt here for passenger service and rebuilt with a cab at each end, as you can see, and cut down considerably to work on up the Festiniog line. The Vale now isn't used regularly on passenger trains because we don't have normally timetabled diesel trains, but the Vale is still a vital bit of the equipment because we use it as a standby loco. So any sort of failure out on the line with one of the steam locos means we've got a diesel that's ready to go at the push of a button, which can rescue the train or substitute if necessary. So it's a vital loco, and it's, although the bodywork's looking a little tired at the moment, we know we need in the next year or so to do some repairs. It's basically in reasonable condition. We've also got in stock various gear parts for the final drive gearboxes, which we know will need a rebuild sometime in the mid to long term, but when that will happen exactly, we're not sure at the moment. Right, this is the Moyle Guest, also known by some work staff as the Castle Arg. It's our probably most used yard shunter at Boston Lodge. It's bigger and heavier and more powerful than the Harold, so it will move around quite reasonable size locos, carriages, whatever we need moving around the yard. It was originally built 2'6" gauge for the Dean Hill Armaments Depot in the south of England, where it used to push nuclear weapons into underground bunkers. We bought it from there, had it re-gauged to 2' gauge, and it's a very useful piece of kit round the yard. Right, this is the Criccieth Castle. It was assembled here in the 1990s from a kit of parts originally built by Bagleys in Burton-on-Trent, intended to go to Mozambique, but the contract fell through and there were part-built locomotives. We bought the set of parts and assembled it here at Boston Lodge. We modified the design quite a bit to suit what we needed, because at the time it was a time when we ran regular passenger trains, and we wanted regular passenger trains with diesel locomotives, and we wanted a replacement for the Conway Castle loco, which at the time was the regular passenger diesel. So the Criccieth was rebuilt with that job in mind. We put in a more powerful diesel engine, a Caterpillar, to give it slightly greater haulage capacity and speed for passenger trains. So it's obviously vacuum brake fitted to work passenger trains. So its role now is more of standby locomotive, occasional passenger train loco, and a heavy shunter for moving about carriage sets, and any other shunting around the yard, or works trains out on the line. It's also used by the permanent way department occasionally, in the S&T department. The loco's got two vacuum pipes, as you'll notice. One of them is the conventional vacuum train pipe that is used on all the vacuum stock. The second pipe is a high vacuum pipe, which was a system originally developed for the 1950s modernization plan DMUs on BR, in order to get a quicker vacuum brake release for those DMUs. We used it on here when we developed in the 1980s and 1990s a push-pull train with a driving van trailer, and there was a lot of scrap DMU equipment available at that time, so we incorporated that into this loco, and a number of carriages were fitted up. Although that system has now fallen into disuse, really, because we're not running regular diesel passenger trains, only occasional now. Upnor Castle is definitely one of our heritage diesels, I think you could call it. It's was originally built for the Chattenden and Upnor Railway, 2'6" gauge. It's been here on the Festiniog for many years, I think since the 1960s. Somebody will probably correct me if I'm wrong, or early 70s maybe. It was built 2'6" gauge, but re-gauged to 2 foot. It's been re-engined. It's had various bits of work over the years, but one time was used on regular passenger trains, but not anymore. Its role now is mainly for works trains, for permanent way department, S&T department, or round Boston Lodge shunting. Having returned it to its more like its original use, it's rather than pressing it to run quickly on passenger trains, it's actually a very reliable performer in the engineering train role. So again, very useful loco. Several years ago we were able to acquire from Shotton Steelworks two 2'6" gauge diesel shunting locos, one of which we've rebuilt. It's a 2 foot gauge, and repaired it, built a new cab and so on and so forth. That loco is now Bill, and generally works up at Dinas Depot. It's also vacuum brake fitted, which makes it useful for moving carriage sets about up there, as well as pulling Garretts in out the shed. This is the other loco of the pair. Nominally, it's going to be called Ben. It's a fairly modern 1980s design Hunslet loco with a Ford Dover diesel engine and relatively modern transmission parts. So it's a project we are keen to progress to rebuild like Bill. It'll be a useful modern shunting and works loco. So sat here at the moment, but hopefully in the next year or so we'll be able to progress this further. This is our very heritage Kerr Stewart diesel loco number 4415, which returned to the UK many years ago now, and has been a long-term mainly volunteer restoration project, and the chassis is now pretty well rebuilt. The wheel sets have been sorted out. The gearbox, which is what you see here, has been dealt with and refitted. The major challenge has been still is the reconstruction of the McLaren diesel loco, deep diesel engine even. That's needed a new crankshaft, which has been now machined by a specialist engineering company, and that's delivered here to Boston Lodge. And there's some work on the crankcase to do, and still remains a lot to do on the engine itself, but there's a dedicated bunch of volunteers that have been working on this on and off, and hopefully when it's possible they'll be back and continuing the project apace. But it's a very historic loco for the Festiniog and the Welsh Island, and in the next few years we'll hopefully see it running again. This is the Conway Castle locomotive. It's basically started out as the same design as the Arpner Castle. Was rebuilt here in the 1980s for one of for passenger services, and it had the push-pull gear fitted to it, and ran for many miles working those services back then. Its role now will be for works trains and standby loco. Here is the Gardner diesel engine, Gardner 6LXB, which is not the original engine loco was built with, but one fitted here back in the 1980s, but it's in engines in reasonably good order. The transmission here, that has had some rebuilding done on it, and in fact it's been the main casing and the output part of this gearbox has been replaced with one from a standard gauge shunting loco from Plymouth Docks that we were able to acquire. It's the same basic type that was fitted to these locos, but this is a slightly more substantial version. So this rebuild of this loco has been progressed by volunteers on an occasional basis, and hopefully again we'll be able to see this running in the next year or so. Be further useful works diesel loco. So when the loco was rebuilt in the 1980s for passenger service, the cab was designed with that in mind, with driver sitting for quite a long time whilst driving, whereas now, because the role is more of a shunting and engineering train role, and that cab that was built in the 1980s is well, it was in poor condition. We're going to replace that and some of the bodywork with simpler, more simple bodywork, probably more like back to the Upnor Castle style of cab and bodywork, although the design for that is yet to be finalised.